The sudden sound of heavy breathing reached the man before the sight did. It was deep, strained, an unusual noise that stood out against the quiet hum of the savannah. His instincts sharpened immediately, and his body went still. His eyes scanned the horizon, and then he saw it, a massive form towering above the grasses, swaying slightly in the distance. The elephant, once powerful and steady, now struggled against its own weight. Its massive legs buckled, and the animal's body seemed to fight gravity itself. For a brief moment, it held on, but then, with a soft, heavy thud, it collapsed to the ground. The man's heart tightened, and without thinking he moved forward, his every step steady but urgent. There were no trumpeting calls, no sudden flurry of activity, no sign of predators. It was an eerie silence, punctuated only by the labored breathing of the elephant. The savannah, vast and open, felt unnaturally still, as though the land itself had paused to witness what was unfolding. The man's chest tightened as he quickened his pace, the weight of the moment sinking in. He could see the elephant's chest rise and fall with each ragged breath, each movement of its massive body slow and deliberate. But something was terribly wrong. The elephant's struggle was evident, but the cause remained unclear. As the man approached, he could see the full extent of the elephant's condition. Its once vibrant brown eyes were now clouded with exhaustion, a deep, weary look that was unmistakable. Its enormous ears flapped weakly, and there was no sign of the usual energy that accompanied such a majestic creature. Its skin, thick and strong, sagged slightly in places, showing the effects of dehydration and wear. The trunk, which should have been a strong, flexible tool, now rested limply on the earth, twitching faintly with each shallow breath. It was as if the elephant had no strength left to lift it. The man knelt beside the fallen giant, his movements slow and deliberate. He reached out, his fingers grazing the elephant's rough hide, feeling the heat of its body against his touch. The animal's breath was shallow, each intake ragged, each exhale barely audible. The man could feel the tremor in the elephant's massive frame as it struggled with every breath, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on his chest. He knew that something needed to be done, but what? He was a stranger in this animal's world, and the reality of the savannah's brutal natural law seemed impossible to ignore. This was not a simple injury or a minor illness. It felt as though the elephant's life was slipping away with every passing moment. The man's mind raced. He knew that no human intervention could truly heal an animal so vast, so complex. Yet, there was still something deeply human about his presence here, something that couldn't be ignored. The elephant's life, teetering on the edge, demanded action, even if he didn't know what that action should be. He murmured softly, a faint whisper of reassurance, though he knew it couldn't calm the beast. "Stay with me," he said quietly, though the words felt hollow in the vast emptiness of the savannah. The elephant's body trembled beneath his touch, the final signs of exhaustion and distress. It was clear that the struggle had been long, that this was not a sudden collapse, but the culmination of something more profound, something that the man couldn't quite place. The air seemed to thicken as the man continued to kneel beside the elephant, watching its body strain with every breath. He knew the elephant's fate was uncertain. The weight of the moment pressed against him, and yet there was no time for indecision. As he sat in stillness, unsure of what he could offer, something unexpected stirred in the air. It was subtle at first, a shift in the atmosphere, a faint vibration that grew stronger with each passing second. And then something happened. A quiet stirring from within the savannah, a presence in the distance. The wind shifted slightly, carrying with it the faintest rustle of leaves, the soft crack of a branch snapping underfoot. The man's senses sharpened, the stillness of the moment broken by the subtle sounds that grew louder, closer. He turned, instinctively, sensing the movement before he could fully see it. The herd was approaching. The first to emerge from the underbrush was the matriarch, her massive form cutting through the tall grasses like a force of nature. Each step she took was measured, deliberate, as though she bore not only her own weight, but the weight of something far greater, perhaps the responsibility of the entire herd. Her presence commanded the land, a steady and unyielding force, her large ears flapping gently in the wind. Behind her came the rest of the herd, a long line of elephants moving with purpose, their large bodies parting the grass effortlessly. They did not rush. There was no hurried movement, no alarm in their steps. The man stood still, his breath quiet, observing the grace with which they moved. There was no sound of trumpeting, no urgent calls to one another. It was as if they understood the gravity of the moment, an understanding born from the rhythms of the savannah, a knowledge that transcended words. The matriarch moved closer to the fallen elephant, her massive, intelligent eyes scanning the body with a quiet assessment. The rest of the herd followed, stopping at a respectful distance. They did not push forward, did not disturb the air with frantic movements. Instead, they stood together, their presence silent but deeply felt, as if their very being added a weight to the scene. The man, feeling the sacredness of this moment, took a step back, careful not to intrude. He could sense the deep bond between the herd and the fallen elephant, a connection not just to the individual, but to the greater flow of life that connected all things. He understood then that the herd was not here to intervene, to alter the course of the dying elephant's fate, but simply to witness. Their presence, quiet and unspoken, seemed to hold a mirror to the man's own experience, a witness to the inevitable. The matriarch lowered her head slowly, her trunk extending outward. She touched the fallen elephant's side gently, as though offering a wordless comfort, a gesture of solidarity. The man watched the subtle tremor in her trunk, the way her eyes remained fixed on the body in front of her, her expression calm, filled with a deep understanding that only time in the wild could teach. She stayed there for a long while, her body still, her presence unwavering. The herd, too, seemed rooted to the earth, their large forms standing in quiet reverence. There were no words exchanged, no hasty actions, just the soft rustling of the wind, the distant murmur of the savannah. The man couldn't fully comprehend the depth of what he was witnessing, but he could feel the weight of it, an emotional connection that transcended human understanding. The herd stood together, united in their quiet acknowledgement of the cycle of life. There was no rush, no urgency to change the inevitable. They stood as one, observing, waiting. The man could almost feel their collective consciousness, the weight of shared memories, and the silent acknowledgement that life would continue, as it always did. As the herd remained, the man stayed at the edge of the gathering, his role as observer clear. There was no need for him to intervene, no action to take. The savannah held its breath, as if everything around them, the herd, the land, the dying elephant, was part of a larger rhythm, a movement beyond the grasp of human hands. The moment was theirs to experience, not to alter. The elephants stood their ground, unwavering, their silent respect filling the air, and the man, deeply moved, felt the profound weight of nature's course unfolding before him. The stillness that surrounded the fallen elephant was thick, almost suffocating in its weight. The air hung heavy, the quietness a silent acknowledgement of the fragile moment that had unfolded. The herd stood close, their large, powerful bodies almost forming a protective barrier around the downed elephant. Their presence was quiet but strong, a steady reminder of the communal bond that tethered them together. For a long time, nothing moved. The fallen elephant's body lay motionless on the savannah floor, its chest rising and falling with shallow, labored breaths. Hope seemed to be slipping away, like sand through an open hand, until, at last, a subtle shift in the air stirred. It was faint at first, a barely perceptible tremor that rippled through the elephant's massive body. The movement was so slight it could have been overlooked, but to the man it was enough. His breath caught in his chest, a flicker of hope igniting within him as he leaned forward slightly, eyes fixed on the creature before him. The elephant's head, which had been heavy against the earth, began to lift. Slowly, almost painfully, it rose inch by inch, as if unsure whether it still had the strength to continue. The matriarch, standing a few paces away, released a soft huff of air, her trunk twitching as she regarded the fallen elephant with focused intensity. Her attention never wavered, and in her stillness there was an undeniable sense of patience and care. The movement was slow, like the first signs of dawn breaking after a long, dark night. The fallen elephant's body quivered with the effort, its massive legs trembling as if they could not yet bear its weight. The man remained motionless, his heart pounding in his chest as he observed the struggle. He had seen many moments of pain in the wild, many struggles that ended in quiet resignation. But this was different. The fight to rise was not one of desperation. It was the quiet, steady strength of survival. The herd, gathered close by, seemed to share the man's breathless anticipation. They too watched, their eyes never leaving the fallen elephant. The air around them felt charged, thick with expectation. The matriarch's gaze never strayed, her eyes locked on the fallen elephant, as if willing it to rise, her body as still as the savannah around them. The gentle rustle of the grass in the breeze was the only sound that pierced the silence, a soft reminder that the world continued beyond this fragile moment. The earth, the sky, and the herd waited. The miracle was unfolding slowly, quietly but unmistakably. With a final tentative push, the elephant's head rose fully, its trunk twitching as it took a deep, shaky breath. There was no sudden burst of strength, no dramatic leap to its feet, just a slow, deliberate movement that spoke volumes. The elephant wasn't ready to surrender. It was fighting its exhaustion, not with force, but with the simple will to survive. The man knelt closer, his eyes never leaving the elephant, his body steady in the moment. A sense of awe washed over him as he watched the creature before him, the once heavy, motionless body now showing signs of life again. The elephant's eyes, once clouded with pain and weariness, now shimmered with something brighter, something stronger. Though still trembling from exhaustion, it was no longer lifeless. There was hope in its gaze, and the man, overcome with quiet wonder, whispered softly, "You're strong." His words were spoken with the deep, reverent respect that only moments like this could inspire. The elephant's body shuddered once more, but this time the movement was different. It was the first sign of strength. Slowly, Carefully, the elephant shifted its weight. Its legs quivered beneath it, but they held firm, and the animal's body began to rise, inch by inch. The process was slow, tentative, but it was undeniable. The miracle had begun. The herd, still watching, seemed to exhale as the fallen elephant regained its strength. No dramatic celebration, no loud calls, just the quiet, powerful recognition that life was returning to the elephant, moment by moment, step by step. The man watched, still kneeling, his heart filled with awe. It was a moment that could not be captured in words, only felt. In that silence, amidst the trembling legs and slow breaths, hope had found its place again. The herd stood still, their massive bodies forming a silent, powerful presence around the fallen elephant. The air seemed thick with a collective energy, a shared understanding that wove them together in a moment of profound unity. They did not crowd the injured animal, but their presence was undeniable. Each elephant, from the youngest to the eldest, exuded a quiet strength that filled the space. The matriarch, her calm gaze steady and unwavering, remained close, watching over the fallen one with a silent authority. Her posture was poised, filled with the wisdom of age, as she observed the scene unfolding before her. Slowly, other members of the herd began to move in, each one drawing nearer in a measured, deliberate fashion. The young elephants, still spry with energy but full of reverence, approached carefully, while the elders moved with a slow grace that spoke of years spent navigating the wild. Together, they formed a loose circle around the fallen elephant, their large forms an unspoken barrier between it and the outside world. This was not a moment of panic, but one of solidarity. The herd had come together, not just as a group, but as a collective force, a living, breathing embodiment of support and strength. The man, standing at the edge of the scene, felt the weight of their presence like a soft but powerful tide. There was no rush to act, no frantic movement. The herd moved with purpose and patience, their steady breathing filling the air, each inhale and exhale harmonizing with the labored breaths of the fallen elephant. The energy in the space shifted, subtle but tangible. The fallen one was not alone in its struggle. It was surrounded by the quiet, unwavering support of its family. The herd's presence seemed to knit an invisible thread of connection, an unspoken bond that transcended the physical. It wasn't just the fallen elephant that was being restored in that moment. It was the entire herd, their collective energy lifting and reviving their member, breathing life back into the one who needed it most. The matriarch, ever the steady anchor of the group, gently extended her trunk toward the fallen elephant. Her touch was soft, unhurried, as she reached down to make contact with the injured animal's back. There was no force, no urgency in the gesture, only a calm, reassuring presence. It was as if she was reminding the young elephant that it was not alone, that the strength of the herd was here to support it. The fallen elephant, still weak, responded to the touch with a small movement of its head, barely perceptible, but meaningful. It was an acknowledgement of the support, of the quiet power surrounding it, of the love that radiated from the collective strength of its family. Slowly, the fallen elephant began to rise, its legs trembling under the weight of the effort. There was a moment of stillness as it gathered itself, and then, with quiet determination, the animal pushed itself upward. The movement was slow, deliberate, as if the very presence of its family had rekindled its will to rise. The struggle was not as frantic this time. The energy surrounding it was calm, focused, as if the animal knew it wasn't alone in this fight. The herd's energy seemed to flow into the fallen elephant, reinforcing its will, steadying its body. The man watched in awe, a silent witness to this powerful, tender moment. His heart swelled with quiet wonder as he observed the fallen elephant slowly standing on all fours, its body trembling but finding strength in the solidarity of its family. There was no rush, no sudden surge of movement, just the slow, steady rise of a creature finding its footing once again. It wasn't just the physical recovery that moved him, but the healing of the spirit, the powerful reminder of the resilience of life. The bond between the animals was palpable, the silent language of the herd speaking louder than any words could. The fallen elephant, now standing, remained still for a moment, its body anchored by the collective strength of its family. The man, still standing quietly at the edge, knew that this was not just a recovery. It was a moment of rebirth, a reminder of the quiet, unyielding power of the wild. The herd had done what they had always done, lifted one of their own, restored balance, and carried on. And as the injured elephant stood tall once more, the man felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for being allowed to witness such a raw, beautiful display of life's resilience. The elephant, now standing, took a deep breath, its massive chest rising and falling with a slow, deliberate rhythm. Though still weak, it was alive, its enormous form trembling slightly, the unsteadiness of its legs a clear reminder of the struggle it had just overcome. The herd, having remained nearby, formed a protective circle around the elephant, their silent presence offering strength. They began to move, the soft rhythm of their steps reverberating in the quiet air, guiding the fallen elephant back toward their safe embrace. Slowly, with great care, the elephant took its first tentative steps, its legs shaking as if unsure, but finding strength in the support of its family. Each movement was a quiet victory, a testament to resilience, a reminder of the strength that lies within the wild. The man watched, his gaze steady as the herd began to move in unison, the fallen elephant trailing just behind. There was no rush, no chaotic reunion. Instead, there was only the steady, deliberate pace of a family that understood the delicate balance of survival. Elephants moved as one, their bodies flowing together like a living river across the savannah. The man stood still, watching them, the quiet grace of the moment overwhelming in its simplicity. He had seen something rare, something that spoke of life in its purest form. There were no triumphant roars, no loud exclamations. There was only the soft, unspoken bond between them, a bond built on trust, survival, and the shared will to live. His heart swelled with a deep, quiet gratitude for the moment he had witnessed. This was not a moment of glory, not a moment of victory that could be measured in words or fanfare. It was a quiet miracle, a reaffirmation of life's strength in the face of adversity. The herd continued to move slowly, the fallen elephant now finding its rhythm among them. The man could see the trembling of its body, but it was no longer falling, it was walking. It was part of the family again, moving together in the vast expanse of the savannah. As the herd continued their journey, the man felt a profound sense of peace settle in his chest. He had been a part of something sacred, something much larger than himself. The elephants, once in danger, now moved freely, their steps steady, their bodies strong, a family restored. The savannah stretched out before him, quiet and still, as the last light of the day began to fade. the sky now painted in soft shades of orange and pink. The moment felt eternal, a fleeting yet timeless connection between the wild and the man, a quiet understanding that no words could ever fully express. The elephants, now fading into the distance, carried with them the strength of their survival, their presence lingering in the air like a whispered promise. The man stood for a moment longer, letting the weight of the moment settle deep within him. There was nothing more to be done now. The wild had spoken its own quiet, powerful truth. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, he turned and began to walk away. His steps were slow, deliberate, but his heart was full. The elephants had found their way, and he had witnessed it. In that silence, in that simple return to the herd, the man felt the quiet pulse of the savannah, alive, enduring, and forever moving forward.